Every state has its own unique lore that is passed down from generation to generation, and the Pelican State is no different. Louisiana folklore is as colorful as the state, and if you spent any time living here, then you've certainly heard these creepy Louisiana legends, folk tales, and superstitions at least once. From the spooky to the downright silly, here are some of my favorite tales from Louisiana folklore. In terms of Cajun folklore, the rugaroo may be the most popular. This creepy creature is said to live in the swamps and sugarcane fields of southern Louisiana, waiting for its next victim. It's often described as having the body of a human and the head of a wolf, almost like a werewolf. The story of the rugaroo is centuries old, and, as any oral tradition goes, sometimes news stories splinter off into their own versions. While all of the versions are cautionary tales, there are a few different versions you may have heard. In one version, the rugaroo hunts down Catholics who do not obey the rules of Lent. In another version, the rugaroo is under a spell for 101 days, and afterward, the spell is then transferred to another person when the rugaroo draws the blood of someone else. During the day, the creature is in human form, so it could be anyone. But at night, they take the form of the rugaroo on the prowl for blood. Regardless of which version you believe is true, there's no denying that the tale of the rugaroo is one of the most well-known of all Louisiana legends. Vampires come in many fictional forms, some of them serious, some of them silly. But what form do real vampires come in? Do vampires exist? There is a fascinating and suggestive tale from the history of New Orleans, one of America's most haunted cities. Indeed, the gruesome story of the Carter brothers reveals something about vampires, and maybe about the Crescent City itself. The year was 1932. A young girl stormed down Royal Street, visibly panicked, her stride broken only by the diligent interception of a police officer. Her story sounded a bit far-fetched. She said that she was tied up by two brothers, along with several other victims, and held captive so the brothers could drink their blood. The girl claimed that she was only able to escape due to her captor's carelessness in securing her ropes. Somewhat skeptical, the police agreed to follow her back to the home on the corner of Royal and St. Anne. Once the police and the girl arrived at the home, which was owned by the Carter brothers, they were horrified to find, as the girl had described, 4 other victims, half dead, tied to chairs in one of the rooms. All victims had their wrists wrapped with bandages, moist and stained with blood. 2 more bodies wrapped in blankets were tucked away in yet another room. The unmistakable suffocating odor of death permeated the apartment. It seemed the brothers left early each morning just before daybreak and returned every evening just after dark. Immediately upon their return, they would take the bandages off each of the captives' wrists and, using a knife, reopen their wounds until blood flowed freely from the victims' cuts. They caught the blood in cups from which they drank until their hunger was sated. The brothers would then redress the wounds with fresh bandages. They spoke very little and gave no concern for their victims' well-being. Rather, the kidnapped were no more than a food source headed for certain death. Unaware that the girl had escaped, John and Wayne Carter went about their routine as usual. Only this time, the police waited for the brothers to return. They were quickly apprehended, and upon their capture, confessed almost immediately, begging to be murdered. The brothers explained to authorities that they were in fact vampires, and would, if released, have no option but to continue to kill. as their need for drinking blood was beyond their control. It's said the brothers were tried as serial killers, convicted, and eventually executed. After their executions, held either immediately or years after their guilty verdicts, the men were laid to rest in their family vault in New Orleans. When the next Carter family member passed away, the vault holding John and Wayne was opened to slide in the new casket. However, the vault allegedly held no trace of the brothers' remains at all. It is said that vampires love the blood of family members best, and that their procession of vampire remains to the New Orleans cemetery was a zigzagging one to confuse the deceased's sense of direction. Apparently, this was enough to keep the Carter brothers away from their kin, but not enough to keep them from escaping their tomb. Ever since their entombment and subsequent escape from their family vault, people have reported seeing the brothers out and about in New Orleans. Someone living in their apartment located in the house on the corner of St. Anne and Royal Street claimed he saw two men on the balcony. He then claimed that the pair of specters leaped from the balcony and into the ether. Other stories about the brothers' return center around the celebration of Mardi Gras, with their favorite pastime being whispering on, then jumping from, balconies. The history of the infamous Sultan's Palace dates back to 1836, when an opulent mansion was constructed on the corner of Dauphine Street and Orleans Street by a dentist named Joseph Cologne Gardet. Built in a Greek Revival architecture, the 3.5-story building featured a half basement along with a distinctive cast iron balcony on the upper floors. In 1839, the property was sold to local merchant Jean-Baptiste Lapretre. For the next 4 decades, Lapretre proudly displayed his mansion, hosting countless parties for friends and luminaries visiting the city. The house was then known as Gardet Lapretre Mansion, after the last name of its first 2 owners. Years later, the mansion was purchased by a wealthy Turkish man who claimed to be a sultan from the Middle East. Not long after the sale, the house was retrofitted with deadlocks and furnished with exotic decor. A man soon moved in with suitcases of gold and jewels, and an entourage of servants and harem. At night, the mansion would come alive with live Arabic music, bakhor, and incense from the Middle East, and dancing young women. The community soon nicknamed Gardet Lapretre Mansion as the Sultan's Palace, or the House of the Turk. However, tragedy would go on to strike the magnificent house. One day, a resident in the French Quarter was walking down Dauphine Street when he spotted blood seeping from the mansion's door down the steps to the sidewalk. The police were immediately called in. Upon opening the doors of the Sultan's Palace, they were greeted by a horrific scene. Dozens of bodies lying face down in pools of blood. Many of them were dismembered and disfigured beyond recognition. It was alleged that a total of 37 men and women were killed during the night of the massacre, with no survivors. A note found on the table read, quote, "This is what happens to traitors," unquote. Over at the mansion's courtyard, the police found a freshly dug grave with a hand protruding from the ground. The body was later revealed to be the mysterious man who had moved in just weeks ago. He was believed to have been tortured before being buried alive. After months of investigations, the authorities at New Orleans discovered that the man who had moved into Sultan's Palace was the brother of the Sultan. It is said that the brother was a fugitive who had committed treason in Turkey. Under the assistance of the Sultan, he fled to the United States and settled into the Sultan's palace. Unfortunately, he was betrayed by one of his aide, who leaked his whereabouts to the government of Turkey. The rest is history. An alternate version of the story suggests that the Sultan had sent a group of assassins to New Orleans to murder his brother. removing any competition that may stand in his way. That said, there were no official records of such a massacre happening in New Orleans at that time. Neither were the true identity of the Sultan and his brother made known. The building was abandoned until the 1930s when it was renovated and divided into the Saba apartments. It was later occupied by the New Orleans Academy of Art, but was forced to close down after most of its students were drafted during World War II. Once again, the building languished unmaintained in a corner of Dauphine Street. The property was salvaged by real estate investors Frank D'Amico and Anthony Vesic Jr. in 1966, who sought to restore the historic property to its former pristine state and convert it into apartments. In 2013, the Sultan's Palace was put up for sale at a reported price of $2.65 million. Today, Sultan's Palace is a private residence with 6 independent apartments for long-term rentals. As such, the property is strictly off-limits to tourists. Over the years, the Sultan's Palace has gained notoriety as one of the most haunted places in the French Quarter. While current owner Nina Nivens believes that the massacre was nothing more than an urban legend, she believes that something unearthly exists in this property. On many occasions, keys to the apartments would disappear and never show up again. Tenants who have lived in the building have also reported many paranormal activities, such as dark shadows and disembodied voices of women in the middle of the night. Phantom music can also be heard throughout the house, although the source of it can never be found. The apparition of a man, believed to be the brother who was assassinated, can also be seen roaming the common areas of the mansion. The legend of Marie Laveau runs deep through the veins of New Orleans. The voodoo priestess was believed to have been born free in the French Quarter of New Orleans, Louisiana about 1794. The daughter of a white planter and a free Creole woman of color. During the mid-19th century, the city pulsed with crowds, commerce, and an undercurrent of secret power. The source of this power was the voodoo religion and its queen, Marie Laveau. She was worshipped and feared by people of all races. Some scholars, however, believe that her powers were actually based on a network of informants. As a hairdresser, when she visited her clients, mostly white, she listened closely to their gossip. Some scholars assert that she ran her own brothel and cultivated information in that way as well. It is presumed that she used this inside information to influence and instill fear in her believers. Whether or not the legends of her abilities as a voodoo priestess are true, it cannot be denied that she has left her mark on this town. She was buried in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 in New Orleans in 1881. To this day, her tomb continues to attract visitors, who unlawfully desecrate it by marking 3 X's on its side, in the hopes that Laveau's spirit will grant them a wish. If there is one person who encapsulates the lure and the danger of the vampire, it is the Comte de Saint-Germain. Making his first appearance in the court of Louis XV of France, the Comte de Saint-Germain endeared himself to the aristocrats by regaling them with events from his past. An alchemist by trade, he claimed to be in possession of the quote-unquote elixir of life, and to be more than 6,000 years old. At other times, the Count claimed to be a son of Francis Rakoczy II, the Prince of Transylvania, born in 1712, possibly legitimate, possibly by Duchess Violante Beatrice of Bavaria. This would account for his wealth and fine education. It also explains why kings would accept him as one of their own. Contemporary accounts from the time record that despite being in the midst of many banquets and invited to the finest homes, he never ate at any of them. He would, however, sip at a glass of red wine. After a few years, he left the French court and moved to Germany, where he was reported to have died. However, people continued to spot him throughout Europe even after his death. In 1903, a handsome and charismatic young Frenchman named Jacques Saint-Germain, claiming to be a descendant of the Comte, arrived in New Orleans, taking residence in a house at the corner of Royal and Ursuline Streets. Possessing an eye for beauty, Jacques was seen on the streets of the French Quarter with a different young woman on his arm every evening. His excursions came to an abrupt end one cold December night, when a woman's piercing scream was heard coming from Jacques' French Quarter home. The scream was quickly followed by a woman who flung herself from the second-story window to land on the street below. As bystanders rushed to her aid, she told them how Saint-Germain attacked and bit her, and that she jumped out of the window to escape. She died later that evening at Charity Hospital in New Orleans. By the time the New Orleans police kicked in the door of Saint-Germain's home, he had escaped. However, what they did find was disturbing enough. The stench of death greeted the nostrils of the policemen, who found not only large bloodstains in the wooden flooring, but even wine bottles filled with human blood. The house was declared a crime scene and sealed off. From that evil night to the present day, no one has lived in that home in the French Quarter. It is private property, and all taxes have been paid to date, but no one has been able to contact the present owner or owners. The only barriers between the valuable French Quarter property and the outside world are the boarded-up balcony windows and a small lock on the door. Whispers of Jacques' sightings are prevalent, and people still report seeing him in the French Quarter. Could it be the enigmatic Comte checking up on his property? Julia Brown was a voodoo priestess who lived in the small community of Freniere, located near the edge of Lake Pontchartrain. By all accounts, she was a helpful member of the community, using her magic to heal the sick and assist those in need. However, like many stories of powerful women, hers took a darker turn. As the legend goes, Julia became bitter toward the town in her later years and famously declared that when she died, she would take the town with her. On the day of her funeral in 1915, a powerful hurricane hit, wiping out much of Freniere and killing many of its residents. Some say it was Julia's curse that brought the storm, while others chalk it up to coincidence. Either way, the legend of Julia Brown has endured, and her name is still spoken with a mixture of fear and respect. This is one of those stories that blurs the lines between folklore and real events, and it speaks to the power of belief. Whether you think Julia Brown really cursed the town or not, her story is a reminder that words and the intentions behind them carry weight. It is also a good lesson in not underestimating people, especially those who seem to possess a little something extra. You never know when a storm might be brewing. The grunch is one of those urban legends that make you question whether you're reading a folklore tale or a bad sci-fi plot. Said to haunt the outskirts of New Orleans, the grunch is described as a cross between a goat and a human. Some say it's the result of inbreeding among a secluded group of people, which feels a bit more like an insult than an explanation, while others believe it's a government experiment gone wrong. This creature is known for attacking animals and draining their blood, kind of like Louisiana's version of the chupacabra. Locals warn that if you're ever out driving near Grunch Road and see a goat stranded on the side of the road, don't stop. It could be a trap, and you don't want to meet the grunch up close. The grunch taps into our fear of the unknown and the strange things that might exist just beyond the city limits. In today's world, it's easy to dismiss these stories as mere entertainment. But there's something to be said for urban legends. They serve as a way to explain the unexplainable, and maybe to remind us that not everything needs an answer. Plus, it's a solid excuse to avoid picking up random goats from the side of the road. The Honey Island Swamp Monster is Louisiana's answer to Bigfoot. According to legend, this creature roamed the remote Honey Island swamp, with yellow reptilian eyes, webbed feet, and a body covered in thick gray fur. Allegedly, the first sighting was in the early 1960s by a pair of hunters who, of course, didn't have a camera on hand. Locals say the monster was born from a wild love affair between escaped circus chimpanzees and alligators, which, scientifically speaking, raises a few questions. The swamp monster has been blamed for everything from mysterious animal deaths to strange noises at night. But much like other cryptids, it mostly seems to be a figment of imagination. Maybe. Our fascination with cryptids says a lot about our need to believe in something beyond the mundane. Whether it's Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, or this swampy water beast, there's something exciting about the idea that the world still holds a few secrets. In a time when technology can track almost anything, the idea of an uncatchable creature is strangely comforting. It also gives us a reason to respect the natural world, and maybe not wander too far off the trail. Perched at the corner of Royal Street in the heart of the French Quarter, the LaLaurie mansion is as grandiose as it is eerie. Built in 1832 by Dr. Louis LaLaurie and his wife Delphine, the mansion served as a testament to their affluence and high societal status. But beneath the facade of opulence, a horrifying secret lay buried. Madame Delphine LaLaurie, revered for her beauty and grace in New Orleans' elite circles, held an insidious pastime behind closed doors. Rumors of her brutal treatment towards her slaves began to circulate, casting a dark shadow on her radiant image. However, the full extent of her monstrous deeds only came to light on a fateful day in 1834. A fire broke out at the LaLaurie mansion, revealing a chamber of horrors within. Responding firefighters discovered enslaved individuals who had been grotesquely abused and subjected to inhumane conditions. The shockwave that rippled through New Orleans that day remains etched in the city's collective memory, giving birth to tales of hauntings that persist to this day. It's said that the enslaved spirits tormented by Madame LaLaurie refused to leave the mansion, their anguished cries echoing through its halls after sunset. Visitors report a heavy, oppressive atmosphere in certain areas of the house, sudden drops in temperature, and inexplicable sounds that echo with the pain of the past. Paranormal investigators have captured ghostly voices and specters in photos, further fueling the mansion's reputation as one of the most haunted places in New Orleans. Many who pass by the mansion claim to see apparitions in the upper windows, their silhouettes flickering in the moonlight. Others have reported hearing chains rattle and feeling unseen hands brush against their skin. These chilling encounters give credence to the belief that the spirits of those tortured at the hands of Madame LaLaurie are yet to find peace. Located in the deep American South, where summers are warm and the air is thick with the spirits of overworked slaves and brutal masters, lies the Myrtles plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. With its majestic wrap-around veranda, blue trim, and 20 rooms, it sits on high ground, appearing like a fortress as you approach. It appears to be something out of a storybook. However, its history is not for the faint of heart. Our story begins with a newly married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Clark Woodruff. Mr. Woodruff was a prestigious judge and owned numerous slaves, as was the norm at the time. One of his house slaves went by the name of Chloe, who for many years fell victim to Woodruff's cruelty. Chloe tried to protect herself from the abuse by listening in to the Woodruff's conversations and modifying her behavior. One day, after being caught eavesdropping, Woodruff cut off one of Chloe's ears, forcing her to carry the shame and disfigurement the rest of her life. Her mutilation was hidden, at the request of the Woodruffs, by the use of a green turban. No one would see this terrifying mark, but the painful experience would stay with Chloe and inspire her to make plans for revenge. On the 9th birthday of the Woodruff's daughter, Chloe placed poisonous oleander leaves into the cake. Chloe's plan was to poison Mrs. Woodruff and their children. Some sources claim that it was never her intention to kill the 3 family members. They suggest that Chloe wanted to get them sick so she could nurse them back to health. In the South, local healers were among the most respected of the community. If Chloe could heal the family, she would be safe from the harsh reality of working in the fields. Tragically, the dosage was lethal, and it ended up killing Mrs. Woodruff and her 2 children. After word spread of her actions on the plantation, the other slaves were the ones to take revenge. Chloe was hanged by the neck for everyone to witness until the life was drained from her body. She was then weighed down by rocks and thrown into the Mississippi River. The plantation was the site of other gruesome activity after Chloe's death. The new owner, a wealthy family man, and his 5 children would pass away from tuberculosis on the property. The home was later passed to one of his surviving daughters and her husband, the Winters. Mr. Winter was a proud member of his community and did his part by teaching Sunday school at his home. One day, as Mr. Winter was teaching, an unknown man rode up on a horse yelling to see him. As he came out to address the man, he was shot at point-blank range on his front porch. He retreated into the home and staggered up the stairs to eventually die in the arms of his wife. The sound of his strong and forceful stomp still linger in the home today, as visitors report hearing heavy footsteps from empty staircases. The plantation went on to be used as a film set for movies like The Long Hot Summer. These visitors were not safe from having their own paranormal encounters. While filming, cast and crew members reported witnessing furniture moving around the home all of its own. They could find nothing to explain this activity. The paranormal activity became more noticeable beginning in the 1970s once it was purchased by the Myers family. Multiple guests and residents reported seeing the transparent and ghostly apparitions of a young girl wearing a green turban moving throughout the property. In 1992, the owner took a famous photo that they believe captures Chloe's spirit. This photo was intended to be used to secure an insurance policy for the home, in case of fire or other natural disasters, not to prove paranormal activity. The presence of a human figure within the photo was undiscovered until it was developed. The owner reports that there was no one in the area at the time the photo was taken. One of the most disturbing paranormal reports occurs inside the home. In the grand hallway, there is an antique mirror just outside of the dining room. The visitors report seeing Woodruff's children appear in the mirror near the room where they were poisoned. One researcher noted that each time the mirror is replaced or resilvered, the same handprint reappears as if they refuse to be ignored. Despite the many ghost stories, there is some debate if Chloe ever existed, or if that was her real name. Today, this residence is known as the Myrtles Plantation Bed and Breakfast, but is also recognized as one of the most haunted houses in America according to the National Geographic. They offer historical tours through the day and into the dark of night. New Orleans is famous for many things, including its iconic ghost stories. Very few stories are, however, as gruesome as the story of the Mad Butcher involving a young German couple that lived in the area back in the 18th century. The story goes that a couple by the name Mr. and Mrs. Hans Meulen started a sausage factory in New Orleans from humble beginnings, and after several years of toil and sacrifice, they became very successful. They were well respected in their community and seemed very happy in their marriage. However, behind closed doors, their marriage wasn't as rosy as it appeared in public. It is said that Mr. Meulen lost interest in his wife and started an affair with a young mistress, who he fell in love with after some time. Mr. Hans Meulen knew he would not have peace so long as his wife was alive, and plotted to kill her so he could enjoy all the wealth with his mistress. One evening, he attacked her and strangled her before throwing her remains into the sausage grinder. However, it did not take long before customers and neighbors started to inquire about the whereabouts of his wife. A few days passed before Meulen came face to face with his wife's ghost. He ran away on that day, but later confessed to the police about the gruesome murder that he'd committed. At this point, Meulen had already become insane and was haunted by his dead wife every night when he went to sleep. He was later taken to a solitary confinement due to his state. Nevertheless, it did not take long before he committed suicide and died. Legend has it that the building that housed the sausage factory continues to be haunted by Mrs. Meulen's ghost today, even though it has new occupants. In the early 20th century, the Devil Man of Algiers terrorized the neighborhood across the river from New Orleans. Described as a tall figure with pointed ears, glowing red eyes, and a long cape, the Devil Man reportedly attacked women walking alone at night, leaving claw-like scratches as his calling card. Despite multiple sightings, the Devil Man was never caught, leading to wild speculation about whether he was human or something far more sinister. While many believed the Devil Man was a local criminal using the guise to instill fear, others insisted that the creature was supernatural, perhaps even the devil himself, roaming the streets of Algiers to claim souls. The Devil Man story taps into urban legends of mysterious attackers or modern-day boogeymen who prey on our fears of the unknown. In a world still grappling with questions of safety, particularly for women walking alone at night, the story feels chillingly relevant. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that walk among us, unseen until it's too late. Located on Charter Street in the historic French Quarter of New Orleans, sits the old Ursuline Convent. The convent is over 300 years old and the oldest surviving structure in New Orleans. It's also home to multiple ghosts and the site of one of New Orleans' most enduring legends. In the 18th century, stories of vampires began circulating throughout New Orleans. As these tales developed, the origins of the vampires were traced back to the old Ursuline convent. Now, hundreds of years later, stories of vampires and ghosts are ingrained into the lore of New Orleans in the old Ursuline convent. The Casket girls were the first New Orleans vampires. The foundation of the Crescent City is directly intertwined with their backstory. In 1728, New Orleans founder Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne de Bienville asked the King of France to send over young women for the city's male population to marry. At the time, men significantly outnumbered women in New Orleans by roughly 4 to 1. As the story goes, the girls and women who were sent over from France were orphaned with no money. All they brought with them were small trunks, or caskets, that contained their personal belongings. This earned them the nickname Filles à la Casket, which translates in English to Casket Girls. After the arrival of the Casket Girls, people began finding bodies with their throats ripped open and drained of blood. Depending on which version of the story you believe, it was thought that the Casket Girls were vampires, or that they had smuggled vampires in from France using their caskets. In one version of the tale, the nuns opened the caskets to find them completely empty, as if the Casket Girls slept in them. The legend goes that New Orleans got their vampire problem under control by shuttering the attic windows of the old Ursuline convent, using 800 silver nails blessed by the Pope. The Ursuline nuns arrived from Rouen, France in 1727 to help reform the New Orleans population, which had many pirates, murderers, and other criminals among its residents. The nuns were also tasked with caring for the sick and poor and educating the youth of New Orleans. The original convent was demolished in the 1740s and replaced with the current structure, completed in 1752. The building is made out of brick and stucco in the French neoclassical style. It was deemed the, quote, finest surviving example of French colonial public architecture in the county by the National Park Service. During the War of 1812, the convent acted as an infirmary for wounded soldiers, and many men died on the property. The main courtyard of the building was even used as a makeshift morgue for sorting bodies. The Ursuline nuns moved out of the building in 1824. Still, it continued to be used by the Catholic Church for various purposes. This included administrative offices and a rectory for St. Mary's Church. Today, the old Ursuline convent is home to an expansive museum featuring historic Catholic artifacts. Although the old Ursuline convent is best known for the Casket Girls, many hauntings and strange activities have been reported over the years. The most persistent ghost sightings are those of the Ursuline nuns. They are seen walking up and down the original staircase in the convent's foyer. The ghosts of soldiers from the War of 1812 have also been spotted, which makes sense considering the convent is where many of them took their final breath. Ghost children have also been heard laughing and even seen playing on the front lawn. Bone fragments belonging to children and infants have also been found on the property. This stands to reason, considering the high child mortality rate in the 18th and 19th centuries. A few years ago, a tourist visited the old Ursuline convent and had an all-around creepy experience. They claimed to hear footsteps in the attic where the Casket Girls were said to have been kept. They also felt that an unseen entity was following them as they made their way through the building. Eager to get outside, the tourists snapped a photo of the convent's picturesque front lawn. When the photo was developed, it was completely white, except for a glowing cross. Despite being a Catholic convent, no cross was on the front lawn. Another story circulated around New Orleans regarding the Casket Girls took place in 1978, about 250 years after they arrived from France. It's said that a pair of ghost hunters set up a camera outside the old Ursuline convent to capture footage of vampires escaping from the shuttered attic windows. There were some rumors that the shutters would, at times, burst open, and mist would come out. The morning after the ghost hunters' stakeout, their bodies were found outside the convent, drained of 80% of their blood, and footage of the vampires had been destroyed. While in no way verifiable, the story highlights the enduring allure of the Casket Girls in the New Orleans Ursuline convent. While stories of vampires are debatable, the Casket girls who arrived in New Orleans in 1728 are very much real. The same goes for the soldiers who died in the War of 1812 and the children who lived in the old Ursuline convent. Although these individuals died centuries ago, their stories live on, and perhaps so do their ghosts. When it comes to historical landmarks with a haunting past, the Spanish Moon in Baton Rouge stands out as one of the most enigmatic and spine-chilling locations. With a history that dates back decades, this iconic music venue has seen its fair share of tales, both intriguing and unsettling. From its fascinating architecture to the inexplicable paranormal activity reported by visitors and staff, the Spanish Moon holds secrets that continue to captivate believers and skeptics alike. Located in the heart of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the Spanish Moon was originally constructed in 1907 as a modest theater. It was initially known as the Star Theater, showcasing various plays and cultural events. Over the years, the building underwent several transformations and name changes, until it was eventually reborn as the Spanish Moon in the 1970s. The Spanish Moon boasts a unique architectural blend of Gothic and Renaissance styles, exuding an otherworldly charm. Its facade features intricate stone carvings and mysterious symbols that have fascinated historians and occult enthusiasts for years. As visitors approach the building, they are greeted by an imposing wrought iron gate that seems to guard the secrets within. Inside, the dimly lit, labyrinthine corridors and a grand hall with vaulted ceilings add to the haunting atmosphere. Patrons often describe a feeling of being transported back in time upon setting foot in the venue, contributing to the overall allure of the Spanish Moon. Over the decades, numerous reports of paranormal activity have emerged from those who have visited or worked at the Spanish Moon. Staff members have reported hearing phantom footsteps echoing in the empty hallways, doors mysteriously opening and closing on their own, and unexplained cold spots in certain areas of the building. Some visitors have claimed to witness shadowy figures darting between the tables in the dimly lit bar area, only to vanish into thin air. The unsettling feeling of being watched, even when alone, has become a common thread in the accounts of those who have had a brush with the unknown at the Spanish Moon. The Spanish Moon's main stage has been the site of spine-chilling encounters. Musicians have recounted strange occurrences during performances, such as equipment malfunctioning inexplicably, or feeling an inexplicable presence lingering behind them while they played. Some artists have even claimed to hear ethereal whispers or faint ghostly applause following their sets. A particular legend surrounds an old grand piano that sits on the stage. It is said that sometimes, when the moon is full and the night is still, the piano will play haunting melodies on its own, captivating anyone who dares to listen. The haunting of the Spanish Moon has sparked numerous ghost stories among locals. One popular tale involves the ghost of a former actress from the theater's early days, said to wander the premises in a flowing white gown, her mournful visage leaving an indelible impression on those who catch a glimpse of her. Another story revolves around a tragic love affair between two star-crossed actors, whose spirits are believed to have remained bound to the theater, forever searching for closure in the afterlife. The Spanish Moon in Baton Rouge stands as a testament to the city's rich history and its spectral mysteries. With its fascinating architecture, eerie ambiance, and spine-tingling encounters, the venue continues to intrigue both believers in the supernatural and skeptics alike. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a paranormal investigator, or simply curious about the unknown, the Spanish Moon's haunted history invites you to step into the shadows and immerse yourself in a realm where the past intertwines with the present. St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 was built in 1789 on a span of 1 block. The grounds hold over 700 tombs, with over 100,000 dead and counting, as it is still used today for burials for the price of only $40,000. This is considered one of the most haunted cemeteries in the United States, with over 200 years of reports having interactions with the ghosts of St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. St. Louis Cemetery No. 2 was built in 1823. Both cemeteries are on the National Register of Historic Places in the Louisiana African American Heritage Trail. St. Louis Cemetery is now only accessible with a guided tour due to vandalism, the latest one being Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau's tomb as it was painted Pepto-Bismol pink. This resulted in the Archdiocese of New Orleans closing the cemetery to the public after March 2015, with only guided tours being allowed. The families of the dead buried here can apply for a pass to visit their loved ones. The cemetery is all above ground burials. This is due to the city's high water table that makes in-ground burials impossible. A coffin buried underground would simply float back to the top. Many of the tombs are called oven vaults or wall vaults. These tombs house the remains of many family members. They are stackable grave sites, placing remains in a cabinet style. Once a body is placed inside, it is left undisturbed in the grave for 1 year and 1 day. After that time, the remains can be pushed to the back of the tomb, making room for another body to be placed inside. Some families prefer to collect the remains and place them inside a muslin bag. One of the most prominent people buried here is Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau, born in 1801 and died in 1881. She is said to be buried in Plot 347 and Cemetery No. 1. She was born in the French Quarter and gained local fame as a voodoo practitioner, learning herbal remedies from her mother, and was a hairdresser to the wealthy. With those herbal remedies, she helped many people during the yellow fever of the 19th century, saving many lives. Using those herbal remedies gained her a reputation as a voodoo practitioner. Many believe she still helps people from beyond the grave, with gifts being left at her gravesite. Her ghost has been seen in many locations throughout the graveyard, although she is said to not be the friendliest spirit. People have reported being scratched, pinched, or shoved down to the ground. Legend says that if you mark her tomb with 3 X's and make a wish, it is granted. Then the person must return and leave a gift at her grave. Another ghost said to walk the cemetery is Henry Veen, who was a sailor during the 19th century. He traveled all over the world and made his final home in a New Orleans boarding house. It was said he was always worried about important papers regarding his family's tomb when he was at sea, and that he asked the owner of the boarding house to keep them safe while away. While out to sea, the owner of the boarding house sold his family tomb. Once Veen arrived back, he discovered the tomb had been sold and was never able to acquire the tomb back, and shortly afterward he died. Henry was buried in an unmarked grave. It is said that his ghost asks walkers by where the Veen's tomb is located, as he is unable to find it himself. His ghost has been seen at funerals, often appearing behind the grieving, asking if there is any more room in the tomb for him. His apparition has been caught on camera, and the sound of a male's voice saying, quote, "I need to rest." Alphonse is another ghost said to be haunting this cemetery. His ghost has been said to take a visitor's hand and pull them to a stop while walking, and asking them to bring him home. Also, he has been seen gathering flowers from others' graves and placing them on his tomb. The legend is said that he was murdered by the Benede family, as he has been said to warn visitors from stepping near the Benede family tomb. It is unknown why they might have murdered him. These are the most prominent spirits that are haunting St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. although there are likely many, many more.